welcome back to episode 19. Those tectonic shifts had moved me back to the UK. Life had certainly changed, but I still had this dream that I could make a career. I could create a position for myself in the field of personal and team development. And so I assiduously pursued the opportunity with Dale Carnegie, but here in England, where I had more of a support structure. Now, I'd also moved back because I was engaged to somebody. You find more about that in the book. And I knew things were going to be difficult when I told her that I was going to pursue this position in sales with Dale Carnegie. And she turned around and said to me, "But what am I going to tell my friends?" Because back in the early 90s, professionals had a complete disdain for anybody in sales. And to a degree, they still do. Although I'm meeting an awful lot of lawyers nowadays who are realising that actually sales and marketing is what's going to be the make or break for them and their companies. But in the early 90s, it was like beyond the pale that you had anything to do with sales. So I started with Dale Carnegie in London, and I can remember going to a meeting with the sponsor, a man called Sherman Brown, and his organisation in Chiswick. And they had a facilitator there to do some team building. Now, the interesting thing about this was we were divided into two groups. And it was a conceptual exercise that there was a nuclear meltdown, there was a line which you couldn't go across, and there was a bunch of objects. And one team had to solve it by containing the nuclear meltdown. Another team had to watch the team whose task it was to contain the nuclear meltdown, to watch what happened. Now, there was 8 of us in the group. I could immediately see what to do. But I'm the new kid on the block and nobody wants to listen to me. So I co-opt another chap from our group, and while they're all talking about it, we go solve it. In the debrief afterwards, I got slaughtered. And then I turned around and I said, well, look, you've got to remember, I'm an engineer, and I used to be an engineer in the Navy, and we're trained to deal with crises. If there was a fire in the engine room, we didn't have a meeting about it. You got on and did something about it. It's instinctive. It's now. And what you were doing there is you're actually creating the same thing. There was a nuclear meltdown. I'm an engineer. I looked at it. I saw the solution. Now, bang, let's do it. No time for conflabs. But anyway, I got told I wasn't a team player, which is very interesting since my company is called Perfect Teams. Anyway, so here I am in London, early 90s, charged with building a business for Dale Carnegie in South London. Now, the sales culture in the UK is and was radically different to what it was in the US. And the thing I noticed really quickly was a complete lack of interest in anybody paying for themselves to do the course, except for 3 people. I still know one of them. One of them's unfortunately dead, the other one's retired, but the 3 individuals, I can still see them in my mind's eye. Jonathan Butterworth, who went on to run a Specsavers franchise, Nick Rickson, who ran a packaging company in South London, and Peter Baker, who worked for British Telecom. Those 3 individuals paid for themselves to do the Dale Carnegie course, which goes against the grain of most people wanting to be given things. In selling Dale Carnegie, I realised it wasn't the individuals that were going to invest and pay to do the course. It was the companies, the people that ran the companies, the owner-managers, the directors, the managing directors, they now call them CEOs. Those were the people, that was obviously my target audience. After about a year of working in South London and building a book of clients, I suddenly realised that I knew quite a few smart young entrepreneurs. And so I decided to bring them all together, and we created something called the Croydon Movers and Shakers. We used to hold the meetings every month in the offices of Bride and Johnson One of the entrepreneurs was Peter Dobner, an Austrian man. Him and his wife, Crystal, were world champion ballroom dancers, and they created a company called Chris Ann, which was all about costumes for people in the ballroom industry and the dancing industry. Talk about right time, right moment, because they ended up getting the contract for Strictly Come Dancing. And Peter and Christina eventually sold out the company and moved back to Austria. I realised that the way to build a business was to be talking to people that ran businesses. Those are the people with the mindset to invest in themselves and to invest in their staff. I was talking to my dad shortly after coming back from the States, and I told him about this attitudinal difference between the UK and the USA. And he said, that reminds me, when Malta got its independence, it was run by a chap called Don Mintoff, the Prime Minister. Don Mintoff was always saying, give it to me, give it to me. And that exaggerated incoming of the arms was, give it to me, I'm dependent on you. And he called it the Maltese Breaststroke. And I have to say, and a lot of people might not like hearing this, but I have to say, that's what I sense as being the attitude of the majority of the people I was meeting in the UK was, give it to me, except for the people that were going out and creating. So if you've liked this chapter, give it a thumbs up, comment on it, please share it with other people. This chapter, this episode was fundamentally about invest in yourself. Doing that will give you the personal growth. Thank you.